I'm Autumn Lockett.
And this is Mitch Randall.
And you're listening to Good Faith Weekly.
On this episode of Good Faith Weekly, we're going to talk a little bit about how everybody is being so creative in their homes during this current pandemic. We're also going to talk about what's going on with refugees around the world, in particular, what's going on with refugees around the U.S.-Mexico border. And then in our second segment, we're going to be interviewing Reverend Lorenzo Ortiz. Reverend Ortiz made a very difficult decision when the U.S.-Mexico border was closed to remain on the Mexico side, ministering to the hundreds and thousands of people who are on the refugees who are on the other side of the border. So we'll be talking to him in our second segment. Autumn, it's good to talk to you. Doing okay?
Yeah, we're doing great. You know, some of that creativity you talked about early on is out of desperation. It's sort of like our afternoon cup of coffee. Like, we do it because we have to in these trying times. I think, I'm seeing churches be really creative. We talked, we'll be airing it here soon, later this week. Talked to David Turner and how they had their drive-in church. You've been calling it drive.
So cool.
You're calling it drive-through church, Mitch, but it's not really drive-through.
It's not a drive-through church. It's a drive-in church. That's right.
Drive-through church might involve a corn dog communion, which I wouldn't be opposed to.
Oh, that'd be a great conversation. Would you like ketchup or mustard with your corn dog communion?
Now, I will tell you, when Sonic does their 50-cent corn dogs, I take my own Grey Poupon because I'm just classy like that.
You are classy. That is Central Texas classy.
It really is. In our house this week, though, we got pretty desperate for some warm fuzzies. And I've been reading stories about neighborhoods who are putting their Christmas lights back out.
Yeah, that's really neat.
Yeah, so that families who are feeling kind of, cabin fever can drive around and look at Christmas lights. People are putting, teddy bears indoors and things like that, just to try to have some kind of community within our larger community.
Right.
And our family loves holidays, especially those winter holidays. And so yesterday actually, I took the day and we had Thanksgiving.
No way.
We did.
How did that go?
It went, as well as any holiday with 4 kids could go. There weren't any in-laws involved, so that's always a plus because we were sequestered here in our house. But we found the 2019 Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade on YouTube.
Man, so you guys went all out. Macy's Day was everything.
We even watched the dog show after. I mean, it truly felt like Thanksgiving. I freeze cranberries at the end of every November season because we love cranberries. This is not going to be like a food podcast, but just give me a minute. And we had a turkey and dressing. I made pecan and pumpkin pies, and just the smells of the season and the holiday parade broadcast with no mention of COVID-19 was just the reprieve and mental break that we needed.
Right. That's amazing. And I can't remember if you talked about it on a previous episode or not, but I've seen this replicated on social media with children having birthdays during this current crisis and being locked behind closed doors, having birthday parties canceled, and a call out by parents on social media to help make their kids' birthday special, and people have been responding incredibly. I mean, with cards and gifts. I mean, they've been just showering love upon these children. So that happened in your house.
It did. Yeah, we have a March 22nd birthday, and he was pretty heartbroken because he wasn't going to get to have his friends over. And so we did kind of an APB, like, please just send a card. It doesn't need to have money in it. Like, just send a card. And everyone just responded so robustly. We had hand-painted cards. In fact, presents are still coming in. It's sort of like Hanukkah around here. It's 8 crazy nights of love.
That's fantastic. Oh, wow. Well, I mean, there's so, like I said, there's so many creative things that people are doing right now. I mean, social media is flooded with these creative people. I've seen just in our close circle of friends, people doing porch concerts, playing guitar, piano, just trying to just bring some sense of peace and community in this time of isolation. So it's really, really cool to see. I think my family and I are going to get the old board games out tonight. And the 4 of us are going to gather around the dining room table, maybe play a mad game of Risk or something like that.
Oh man, that sounds like a hoot and a holler.
Another Central Texas saying, a hoot and a holler. No, right. We're really excited about it.
Something else that's been really interesting is, we're talking about kind of these individual responses and being creative. We've talked about churches, but I've been really encouraged and inspired by the companies who are giving back in different ways, whether they're letting people, skip a payment on, something that they need to pay for, or services like educational kind of services that are suspending their annual costs so that families can have access. Now, probably it's a little bit of an advertisement, but it's working. I mean, we're using some apps and some things with our kiddos that we haven't purchased in the past, but we're getting to use them for free right now. It's been a real help.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, not only is families coming together and being creative, but also corporations and small businesses. Just the whole idea of curbside service now is a thing. A lot of companies or restaurants are already doing that, and it seems like everybody's doing that now. And then corporations, even reconstructing their factories. In a lot of cases, some auto industry makers in Michigan and elsewhere are reconfiguring their factories to make ventilators, which are so desperately needed right now. Same thing with the 3M mask. So basically what we're saying is, good job, America.
That's right.
Good job, people around the world. You're doing a great job. This is a horrible, terrible moment in history, but we are persevering and we're getting through this together. So it's neat to see.
It is.
Welcome back to the pod. And we want to shift gears right now and talk a little bit about what's going on with the most vulnerable in the world when it comes to really trying to obtain resources in this time of peril. Here locally in Oklahoma, what we're discovering is food banks are really being depleted of their resources. Their shelves are almost empty in many cases. A lot of local businesses have stepped up and have tried to help in that effort. But the reality is the need is so great that it's just hard to keep up with demand. In fact, one of our good friends to the pod, Imam Imad and Chauncey in Oklahoma City, put out a call on social media the other day that their food pantry was almost bare. And thankfully people, responded and tried to fill those shelves. But I'm telling you, Autumn, this pandemic, the way resources are being depleted is really causing havoc among those who are food insecure and struggling financially as well. Yeah,
and it's, I think we're all feeling a little bit of this, and something that Elizabeth Thompson talked about on our previous episode was how we use the fear. She's like, the fear is supposed to inspire you to do something. It's there for a reason. The fear itself is not a bad feeling. It's what you do with the fear to be healthy. All of us have this lizard brain part of us that's like, store up all the things that we need and fill our freezers and fill our pantries and overfill even. But at the same time, we have to be able to look out for others. Not only, leaving a couple of packs of chicken for someone else to get, but, I think it's one of those things you have to have an eye out. Yes, you should be prepared, but you don't have to over prepare to the point of being selfish.
Yeah, in fact, I got a story told to me the other day by one of our colleagues, Johnny Pierce, who is our executive director for publishing, executive editor here at Good Faith Media. He was telling me that he was made his weekly trip to the grocery store where in the hour that, as he said, and I'm not calling Johnny old, please don't take offense to this, but he said, when old people shop, he said he walked back to the back of the grocery store, and he said you could almost hear the angels singing, because as he turned the corner, there were two full containers of toilet paper sitting there on the aisle. And he said, I quickly threw both of them into my basket, and then his conscience got a hold of him. And he said, all I could think of is that little old man that I passed on the way back to get the toilet paper, getting back here and the shelf being empty of toilet paper. So I took one of them out and put it back on the shelf. And I said, well, Johnny, you have received your crown today, because that was a good thing to do.
That's exactly how Jesus would shop for toilet paper in these times.
Oh, save that. Oh my gosh, that's fantastic.
Always think no. Like, so I heard that a coffee company that's very popular with a Green Mermaid, I'm not going to say because we're not sponsored by them yet.
Right.
But they gave their employees at each store the option to go home and still be paid, or to keep their store open and still be paid. They had the option. So if you find these coffee shops that are still open, that's why, because the employees have chosen to drive-through only.
Right.
In our area, but the ones that closed had a lot of dairy products and had a lot of things that were going to, they weren't shelf stable like coffee beans. What were they going to do with it? And I know here in Norman, the Center for Families and Infants, CCFI, received a large donation of coffee shop dairy products, because, they weren't going to use it, but these other more vulnerable communities could. So I thought that was really nice.
It is, absolutely. And talking about the most vulnerable, here in a second, we're going to be interviewing Reverend Lorenzo Ortiz, who is now in Mexico on the other side of the border. And when the border was closed, he made the conscious decision to stay in Mexico to minister among refugees that he has been working with for years upon years. As we think about the most vulnerable, a lot of times we began to think immediately about our needs, the needs within our community, and we forget that those refugees and migrants around the world haven't gone anywhere. Still exactly where they were when this crisis broke out. I was reading an article the other day about the refugees in Europe who had migrated all the way from Syria and the civil war that was taking place there, fleeing just violent places in the world, and how now inside these camps that they're a breeding ground for the spread of this virus. And as of yet, it has not penetrated those camps, but it most likely is probably going to get there. And when it does, it's just going to explode because of the proximity of everybody. And so
you can't distance in a refugee camp.
No, you cannot at all. And so, when we talk to Pastor Lorenzo here in a little bit, I know he's going to talk about what's going on in the around the Mexican border. And just imagine, Autumn, you're a mom and you have your 4 kids. You are living in a country that's just torn by war, by cartels, and you flee literally for your life because you're just terrified that your kids are going to die at the hands of these cartels and these civil wars that are taking place. I mean, can you just imagine making your way all the way from Central America to the U.S.-Mexico border? And as you come up on the border, you can literally see hope in your eyesight. And then to have to go through the refugee and asylum seeking process is a headache in itself here in the U.S.
Even in the best of times.
Yeah, even in the best of times, right. I mean, it just is. It is what it is in this process. And now you're hit with this virus. The borders are closed. We'll hear from Pastor Lorenzo here in just a moment that it's just wreaked havoc with a lot of these families. who are just so close to the hope that they wanted to cling to, but yet now it seems even farther away than it did when they arrived.
We'll talk to Lorenzo about what we can do as we sit here, cozied up in our houses watching Netflix, what we can do to support his ministry there. Places like Fellowship Southwest and different ministries that we have down the border. I know CBF does a lot of work down there. And so I think making sure that we have those conduits to be able to funnel our funds and our resources and those things. But one of the things that he'll talk about when we interview him, and not to give away all the spoils, but is that he wants us to pray.
Absolutely. And after the interview today with Pastor Lorenzo Ortiz, for those who are wanting more information, they can go to ethicsdaily.com, because we have, at this time of production of this podcast, 2 articles from Fellowship Southwest Executive Director Marv Knox. Marv's been working closely with Lorenzo. In fact, he was our go-between to get the interview with Lorenzo. And you'll want to see or read more about what's going on at the border, as well as see how ways you can help directly with the ministry down there with those families. So coming up next, Pastor Lorenzo Ortiz, who is now in Mexico after the border closed because of the pandemic.
Are you looking for a new way to grow your faith? Nurturing Faith is offering 5 of their best-selling devotionals for only $12 for Good Faith Weekly listeners. Go to nurturingfaith.net to find hope from Carol Bozeman Taylor, John R. Roebuck, Blake McKinney, Michael L. Ruffin, and Merrill J. Davies. The books are all available in the bookstore section of the Nurturing Faith website. And now, back to Mitch and Autumn.
Welcome back to Good Faith Weekly. I'm Mitch Randall, and we have a very special guest with us today, Lorenzo Ortiz. Lorenzo is a Texas pastor who operates 3 immigrant shelters in Nuevo Laredo, Mexico. And Ortiz made a bold decision to stay behind in Mexico when the U.S. government closed the border to all non-essential travel on Saturday, March 21st. So, Lorenzo, first of all, welcome to the program.
Hello, thank you. Hi, good morning.
Well, I'm Mitch Randall, and Autumn Lockett is our co-host here at Good Faith Weekly, and we just thank you for joining us. We know that you are extremely busy working on the Mexican side of the border, working with refugees in particular. So, first of all, Lorenzo, just introduce yourself. Tell us what you've been doing recently.
Sure. My name is Lorenzo Ortiz, and I'm pastoring a home church in Laredo, Texas. It's called Buen Samaritano Migrante. And we had to start that because of the changes, the not easy to host families in church. So we decided to open our home and register on their home church. So I'm pastoring here.
Excellent. So, Lorenzo, first question I've got to ask is that you were on the south side of the border when the news broke that both the U.S. and Mexico governments were going to be closing the border to non-essential travel. And you made the conscious decision to stay and minister on the Mexican side. Now, not a lot of people would make that choice, but you did. Tell us why.
Yes, well, the main thing is because this families, they're the most vulnerable, I believe. They're coming from Central America, and the Central America families is one of the main financial purpose for the cartels. So nobody wants to help them, like churches or any other ministries or government either, because they know that cartels are going to be after them. So I decided to just focus on those families, and that's why I decided to go across and stay with. We open up 2 shelters, and we want to stay with them as long as we can.
Now, you said these families. You mentioned these families and individuals that you're working with. These are non-Mexican citizens as well, right? These are refugees from other countries.
That is correct. Most of all from a big amount from Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala, and we have some Nicaragua, Peru, Venezuela, and a few Cubans, and but especially mainly the Central America, because that's where the cartel makes the big amount of money for try to get them across. So that's it's just everyday kidnapping. They're after the people that crosses the river for the first time, and that's why we, as a church, now the cartel know what we're doing, and how do we help them? How do we take them from the immigration facilities to the nearest city, which is Monterrey, 2.5 hours away from the border, and we host them in Nuevo Laredo. We feed them, and we try to help them as much as we can. Share the gospel with them and try to give them some other information about their paperwork.
My goodness. So on top of this long trek that these families have made to escape violence and terror in their countries, not only are they facing that long journey, but when they arrive at the border, they're facing situations where they're going to be hungry, they're going to be tired, they need shelter, and now the coronavirus has hit. So can you kind of tell us a little bit about how are people dealing with the virus on top of all of this other craziness that they have to face as human beings?
Right. When they leave their country, you know, there's not just an American dream or just an ambition to have a better life, but a lot of their credible fears that they write down to put on their application for the political asylum. Most of all, they have a connection with the gangs that are kidnapping or beating up or killing, or government that is corrupted and they can't help them at all. So they push them pretty much to leave their homes. They don't have any other option. Mm-hmm. They try to stay as long as they can, but when they know that they already killed one of their relatives, or they're threatening their lives many times, so they have to take the decision on dying in their country or dying on the way trying to get to a better life. So they end up on decided to leave, but then when they leave, they got to cross someone's up to 2 or 3 other countries, and every time they cross a country, they got to deal with other type of cartels. And when they get to the border, they're sent back, and every time they send them back for the first time, that's when the other cartel. There's 2 cartels. One is the Gulf cartel that comes from Monterrey to Reynosa and Reynosa and Matamoros. Mm-hmm. And then when the immigration send them back, they send it through Nuevo Laredo, which is Northern cartel. So another cartel, when they send back for the first time, they take them. So when we pick them up at the immigration, they stop us every day and make sure that we don't have a person for the first time that has been deported. So they check us out every day, and if they see somebody for the first time, they take it with them. They kidnap them. They ask for a certain amount of money to about $7,500 each person. It can be a dad or a boy, or a mom and a boy. Mm-hmm. And then they leave the rest of us with us, and that's how we take them to shelters and take it back. Now we're dealing with another thing, that the virus is getting worse because nobody wants to take him to the nearest cities. So we're packed at the shelters. We have to take this family to Monterrey to relieve the pressure. But now they're the both sides of the immigration, the U.S. side and the Mexican side. Last night, they didn't want the immigration, Mexican immigration. They don't want the people in their facilities because of the virus. Right. So they send it to the middle of the bridge to sleep there. And then at the middle of the bridge, the customs, they don't want them on the middle of the bridge. So this morning, early in the morning, we had to move the people out. And then they said that they got to come back at noontime for their appointment. and they don't allow them to get into the U.S. They just bring their paperwork to the middle of the bridge, let them find out, and then they got to go back and wait in Mexico again. So it's just the church is we're in the middle, helping these families to travel to their destination cities or staying somewhere in Nuevo Laredo, and we're in the middle of the two authorities, the immigration, trying to find out where can they stay or how can they get their new court date. So we're in the middle of all this situations, and then they can have a job so easily now because of the virus. They don't have no funds, no money to travel.
So Lorenzo, let me ask a clarifying question. Are you telling me that there are refugees that were currently on the U.S. side of the border in detention centers, and because of the virus, they were taking them to the bridge and just dropping them off at the bridge?
Not on the U.S. side.
Not on the U.S. side. Okay.
They're all on the Mexican side.
They're all on the Mexican side. Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
So we got to bring them from Monterrey. There's like a logistic travel that we got to do. We pick them in Mexican immigration, take them to our shelters, and then take them to Monterrey, bring them back from Monterrey, some other ones to their appointments in the U.S., and then they meet on the middle of the bridge, and then they send it back.
Okay, there you go. Okay. So how many people are we actually talking about? How many people are you having to move per day?
Well, the two shelters that we have in Nuevo Laredo and the one in Saltillo that we have at another church, we're talking about 200 people that we got staying every day.
Okay. Autumn, you had a question?
Yeah, it was just interesting to hear you say that the shelters weren't considered an essential, operation. Right now in the U.S., we are able to keep up and running homeless shelters, shelters for people who are seeking asylum from domestic abuse. But it's interesting that the bridge is a viable option. Yes,
that's correct. This is one of the things that now that we're dealing that they don't supposed to lose their court date, otherwise they lose their cases, and that's what the customs or immigration in the U.S. told them, that if they don't present themselves to renew their court date, then they will lose all their cases. So they're forced to come, and these are families now that they can't find a job to travel. They don't have a place to stay. They try to look for shelters, and shelters don't want to help them. Even our shelters, we're kind of a little worry about what government is going to say, if they're going to allow us to keep these families out of our shelters because of this virus, or we don't know what they're going to do. So, but we're still facing all the challenges: government, virus, work, places for them to stay, providing their primary needs. So those are the things we're facing here.
So how can we help you, Lorenzo? My heart is just breaking for these families.
Yeah, mainly it's prayer. Prayer that connects us with God's will, and He's always ahead of us, and He's got a plan. He knows what He's going to do. But our prayers, I know, will make a big difference. So we want to ask all the churches to pray for us. I know we're in the middle of being affected either through cartels, through virus, through financial needs, through emotional needs, and we're sharing the gospel in between all this. And we see these as the greatest opportunity to share the gospel and God's love and God's power, because that's what changes and makes it different in people's lives. So it's amazing how God, even on the middle of all this circumstances, He makes people strong and trust more on Him instead of destroying their faith or their hope. So prayer is the main thing. And if somebody's willing to help out in another way, whatever they can, I know that it's not easy for them to travel, but if somebody wants to make like a phone call or video call to see what's going on, they're welcome to. We can share some of those videos and pictures if you'll need some, and that would be, I think, one of the ways that we can all help.
Well, Lorenzo, we would really appreciate those photos and videos. Not only are we going to be praying for you, but there is a means in which our listeners can support your effort down in Mexico during this current crisis. And you are working closely with Fellowship Southwest and Marv Knox out of Texas. Also, Jorge Zapata, and who's working with Fellowship Southwest as well. So if any of our listeners want to help Lorenzo in this ministry, they can send a donation to Fellowship Southwest, and they will forward that money and resource over to Lorenzo to help him minister to these families along the border. Lorenzo, I have a follow-up question. Are any of the refugees and these beautiful people that you're working with, are any of them showing signs of the virus?
Not at all. Thank God we don't have not one. We've been having just like a normal flu or allergies, but not something serious. So we just thank God for what He's doing and protecting us from the virus, and our health is good. I've been having services with these two shelters, and I'm also traveling to Monterey every day, except Saturdays and Sundays. But even Saturdays and Sundays, I'm in Nuevo Laredo, even though that I don't travel to Monterey. But thank God for what He's doing, and we're good.
Good. Well, Lorenzo, thank you so much for joining us. Autumn, do you have any further questions for Lorenzo?
Yeah, Lorenzo, at Good Faith Weekly, our motto is there's more to tell. And gosh, you've already told us so much. I feel like we've maybe already heard yours, but is there any other final word that you'd like for us to hear before we leave?
Yes, I just want to thank God for all the people of God that He's faith on these days, instead of getting weak, it just gets stronger, and that they can use all this obstacles and circumstances, and God and ourselves, we can turn all this into good, to share the gospel, to love our neighbors, to call them and give them a word of faith. This is a great opportunity that all the people, it seems that's more open to listen, to hear what God is doing, and that's what's going to make the difference, what God is doing in the middle of all this, instead of worry about the real, or focusing more about the virus or the bad things that's happening. So just to share God's love and God's power with the people.
Well, Lorenzo, you're certainly providing an example for us that during the midst of crisis, there is a door opening for good people to do good things. And you are certainly doing that, my friend. So thank you for all the hard work that you're doing in Mexico right now. Thank you for your bravery to stay in Mexico when the border was closed. You've got thousands upon thousands of people here in the U.S. praying for you. You've got churches praying for you. And we hope that our listeners will respond by helping you help those who have traveled so far for a hope that they want to cling to. So thank you so much for joining us, and blessings upon you, my friend.
Thank you, and I want to thank CBF and the churches and brothers and sisters that have been helping and praying also for what we're doing. And God bless every one of you.
Lorenzo Ortiz, a Texas pastor on the other side of, or the southern side of the border in Mexico, decided to stay behind in Mexico when the travel limitations were put on by both the U.S. and Mexican governments. Thank you again for joining us, Lorenzo, and God bless.
Thank you. Likewise.